They said she was trash. They said she was lucky just to be allowed in the room. When Bella showed up to the Sterling family's annual gala, she was the ex-wife everyone wanted to forget. But her ex-husband, Mark, didn't just ignore her. He brought his younger, cruel mistress, Chloe, to parade in front of her. They laughed at her dress. They mocked her silence. They thought they held all the cards because Mark's name was on the invite. But arrogance has a way of blinding people to the truth. Mark and his mistress didn't know that while they were busy playing kings and queens, the person they were bullying held the one thing that mattered more than gold, the deed to the very ground they were standing on. This is the story of how a quiet wife silenced a room of billionaires without saying a word. The rain over Seattle was relentless that evening, turning the winding driveway of the Sterling estate into a slick ribbon of black asphalt. The estate, a sprawling masterpiece of Georgian architecture, sat atop a hill in the exclusive Bridal Trails neighborhood, glowing like a beacon of wealth. For 50 years, the Sterling name had been synonymous with shipping logistics and old money. To get an invitation to the Sterling annual autumn gala was to have arrived. But as Bella Vance steered her modest 5-year-old sedan through the wrought iron gates, she felt anything but arrived. She felt like she was driving to her own execution. She parked far away from the entrance, tucking her car behind a row of towering hedges, well out of sight of the valets who were busy rushing to open the doors of Bentleys and Aston Martins. Bella took a deep breath, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. She checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her dress was an emerald green silk gown, elegant, vintage, but undeniably 3 seasons old. She had worn it to this same party 4 years ago. Just get through the dinner, she whispered to herself. Do it for Arthur. Arthur Sterling, the patriarch of the family, was turning 80 tonight. He was the only reason Bella was here. Even after the divorce papers had been signed 6 months ago, after Mark had practically thrown her out of their shared penthouse for a woman 10 years younger, Arthur had insisted. You are family, Bella, the old man had wheezed over the phone, his voice weak from the illness that had plagued him all year. Papers don't change loyalty. I want you there. Bella stepped out into the drizzle, opening her umbrella. The cold wind bit at her exposed arms. As she began the long walk toward the glowing portico, a low growl of an engine roared behind her. She stepped onto the grass just in time to avoid being clipped by a sleek, cherry-red Ferrari Spider. The car screeched to a halt right in front of the valet stand, cutting the line. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Mark Sterling. He looked as handsome as ever in a custom-fitted Tom Ford tuxedo, but his face carried that familiar sneer of entitlement that Bella had once mistaken for confidence. He tossed the keys to the valet without making eye contact. Then the passenger door opened. A high heel, spiked and glittering with crystals, hit the pavement. Chloe emerged. She was stunning in a chaotic, loud way. She wore a dress that was less of a garment and more of a statement. Sequined gold, cut low in the front and back, screaming for attention. She laughed loudly at something Mark said, flipping her blonde extensions over her shoulder. Bella froze in the shadows of the portico columns. She wanted to turn around, get back in her car, and drive until the gas ran out. But it was too late. Mark turned, scanning the entrance to see who was watching his grand arrival, and his eyes locked onto Bella. The smirk dropped for a second, replaced by annoyance, before returning with double the cruelty. He nudged Chloe and pointed. Well, look who it is, Mark said, his voice carrying over the sound of the rain. I didn't think you'd actually show your face, Elle. Chloe squinted, linking her arm possessively through Mark's. Is that Her? She asked, her voice shrill and feigned with shock. Oh, Mark, you said she was plain, but you didn't say she looked like a librarian attending a funeral. Mark chuckled, adjusting his cufflinks. They walked toward Bella, closing the distance like predators cornering wounded prey. Arthur invited me, Bella said, her voice steady despite the thumping of her heart. It's his birthday. Arthur is senile, Mark scoffed, stopping just inches from her. He looked her up and down, his eyes lingering on the vintage dress with disdain. He forgets that you're not part of this family anymore. Your history, Bella. Ancient history. Honestly, it's embarrassing for you to be here. Look at you. You look desperate. I'm here to pay my respects, Bella replied, clutching her clutch bag tighter. Chloe stepped forward, invading Bella's personal space. She smelled of expensive, overpowering perfume and champagne. Respects? Chloe laughed. Honey, you're here because you're hoping for a handout. We know you're living in that tiny apartment in Renton. Mark told me everything. It's sad, really. Trying to cling to a lifestyle you can't afford anymore. Chloe reached out and flicked the fabric of Bella's sleeve. Silk? Or polyester blend? Hard to tell with these old rags. Let's go inside, Chloe, Mark said, checking his Rolex. Don't waste your breath. The air inside is for winners. She can stand out here in the rain for all I care. Wait, Chloe grinned, a malicious idea forming in her eyes. She pulled a half-empty plastic water bottle from her oversized designer purse, something she'd likely been drinking from in the car. Here, since you look so thirsty. She thrust the bottle toward Bella. When Bella didn't take it, Chloe feigned a slip. Oops. She dropped the bottle. The cap was loose. Water splashed heavily onto the hem of Bella's emerald dress, creating a large, dark stain on the silk. Oh no, Chloe gasped, covering her mouth with a manicured hand, her eyes dancing with mockery. I am so clumsy. But, well, it's already raining, right? And that dress was ruined years ago anyway. Mark threw his head back and laughed. Come on, babe, let's get a real drink. They swept past her, entering the warmth of the mansion, leaving Bella standing alone in the cold, the damp stain clinging to her legs. The valet, a young man who had worked there for years and knew Bella's kindness, looked down, unable to meet her eyes out of second-hand shame. Bella looked at the grand oak doors. She could hear the music and laughter spilling out. She had two choices: leave and let them win, or walk in there with a stain on her dress and her head held high. She thought of Arthur, the man who had treated her like a daughter when her own parents had passed away. She thought of the promise she made to him when he first got sick. Bella wiped a raindrop from her cheek, squared her shoulders, and walked toward the light. The grand ballroom of the Sterling estate was a spectacle of excess. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the vaulted ceiling, casting a warm, golden glow over the 300 guests. Waiters in white gloves moved like ghosts through the crowd, offering flutes of Dom Perignon and trays of caviar. When Bella entered, the room didn't go silent. She wasn't important enough for that anymore. But a ripple of whispers traveled through the groups nearest the door. Is that Bella? I thought Mark divorced her. Look at her dress. Is that water? Poor thing. She doesn't know when to let go. Bella kept her chin up, her eyes scanning the room for Arthur. He wasn't in his usual spot by the fireplace. He was likely resting in the study until the speeches began. Bella! The voice was sharp, cutting through the ambient jazz. It was Beatrice Sterling, Mark's mother. She stood by the chocolate fountain, draped in diamonds that probably cost more than Bella's entire life earnings. Beatrice had never liked Bella. She found Bella too quiet, too common Beatrice preferred women like Chloe, women who understood that marriage was a transaction of beauty for status. Beatrice marched over, a glass of wine in hand. "What on earth are you doing here?" she hissed, keeping her voice low so the nearby senator wouldn't hear. "Arthur invited me, Beatrice," Bella said calmly. "Arthur is not in his right mind," Beatrice snapped. "And look at you. You're wet. You're staining the atmosphere. Mark is here with his new partner, and they are the future of this family. You are creating an awkward situation just by existing in this room. I have no intention of causing a scene, Beatrice. I'll just say hello to Arthur, and you will stay away from Arthur," Beatrice interrupted. "He's fragile. He doesn't need to be reminded of Mark's mistakes. Go find a corner and stay in it until you leave." Beatrice turned on her heel and walked away. Bella felt the heat rise in her cheeks. She moved toward the edge of the room, near the catering service entrance, trying to make herself invisible. 10 minutes later, the music lowered. It was time for the pre-dinner toasts. Mark and Chloe were holding court in the center of the room. Mark was loudly recounting a story about a killer deal he closed in Hong Kong, a deal Bella knew for a fact she had structured for him 2 years ago, but she said nothing. Chloe, seeing Bella standing alone by a pillar, whispered something to Mark. Mark grinned and tapped his spoon against his champagne glass. The room quieted down. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mark announced, his voice booming, "before my father comes down, I just want to propose a toast. To family, to the future, and to upgrading." A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the crowd. Mark raised his glass. "You know, life is about shedding the dead weight. It's about cutting off the anchors that drag you down so you can sail on a yacht." He winked at Chloe. "I'm so grateful to have a partner who fits the Sterling image. Beautiful, vibrant, and actually knows how to dress for a gala." He cast a pointed look directly at Bella in the corner. The guests followed his gaze. Suddenly, 300 pairs of eyes were staring at Bella and the dark water stain on her dress. Chloe let out a high-pitched giggle. "Oh, stop it, Mark. You're embarrassing her. She can't help it if she's vintage." The humiliation was physical. It felt like a slap. Bella's grip on her purse tightened so hard her fingers ached. She wasn't just being insulted. She was being erased. They were rewriting the last 10 years of her life, framing her as a burden Mark had finally shaken off. But then, Chloe decided to escalate. "Actually," Chloe said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness as she stepped into the center of the circle. "Since we're talking about shedding old things, Mark, didn't you say there was a family tradition? Something about the sterling sapphire?" The room went deadly silent. The sterling sapphire was a ring, a massive deep blue stone set in platinum, worn by the matriarch of the family for 4 generations. It was currently in Arthur's possession. "Ah, yes," Mark said, his eyes gleaming. "Tradition says the ring goes to the woman who holds the heart of the sterling heir." "Well," Chloe simpered, extending her hand, "I don't see a ring on anyone else's finger. And since someone lost the right to wear the sterling name..." She looked at Bella. "Maybe it's time for the ring to find its rightful owner." Beatrice clapped her hands together. "A wonderful idea. A christening of the new era." Bella felt a cold pit in her stomach. That ring wasn't just jewelry. Arthur had given that ring to Bella 5 years ago, not as a gift, but for safekeeping. He had told her, "This stays with you because you are the only one who knows the value of things, not just the price." She had returned it to the safe when the divorce happened, out of respect. But hearing Chloe demand it as a trophy was nauseating. "I think," Mark announced, "that after Dad gives his speech, we should announce our engagement. And I'll go into the safe and get that ring for you, babe." "Oh, Marky, I love you," Chloe squealed, throwing her arms around him. The crowd applauded politely, though many looked uneasy. The arrogance was palpable. They were carving up the family inheritance before the patriarch was even dead. Just then, the double oak doors at the top of the grand staircase creaked open. The room fell silent. Arthur Sterling appeared at the top of the stairs. He was in a wheelchair now, pushed by his long-time nurse, Sarah. He looked frail, his skin like parchment paper, but his eyes, grey and sharp as steel, swept over the room with a terrifying clarity. He didn't look at Mark. He didn't look at Chloe. His eyes locked onto the corner of the room, on Bella. "Arthur!" Beatrice cried out, rushing to the bottom of the stairs. "We were just toasting to Mark and Chloe. Mark is going to propose." Arthur raised a trembling hand, silencing her. The nurse pushed him toward the lift, and moments later he was rolling onto the ballroom floor. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Mark stepped forward, puffing out his chest. "Happy birthday, Dad. Look at this turnout. All for you. And wait until you hear the news. Chloe and I—" Arthur rolled right past his son. He didn't even blink. He continued rolling until he stopped directly in front of Bella. The room held its breath. "You came," Arthur rasped, his voice amplified by the silence of the room. "You asked me to," Bella said softly, ignoring the stares of the hundreds of socialites. "Happy birthday, Arthur." Arthur looked at the stain on her dress. His eyes narrowed. He looked back at Chloe, who was holding her empty water bottle, and then at Mark, who was looking annoyed that his father was talking to the help. "Who did this to your dress?" Arthur asked, his voice low but dangerous. "It was an accident," Bella lied, trying to save him the stress. "It wasn't an accident," Arthur said. He turned his wheelchair slowly to face the room. "I saw it from the balcony window upstairs." A gasp went through the room. Chloe's smile faltered. "Dad, it was just a joke," Mark said, stepping in with a nervous laugh. "Chloe was just having some fun. Bella can take a joke, can't you, Elle? Besides, it's not like she's wearing anything expensive." Arthur stared at his son for a long, uncomfortable moment. "Fun," he repeated dryly. "Yeah, fun," Chloe chimed in, trying to regain the spotlight. "Anyway, Arthur, Mark promised me the sapphire for our engagement. We thought tonight would be the perfect time." Arthur let out a dry, rattling chuckle that turned into a cough. He waved his hand, beckoning his lawyer, Mr. Henderson, who had been standing silently by the bandstand. "You want the sapphire?" Arthur asked Chloe. "Well, I am the future Mrs. Sterling," Chloe beamed. "And you?" Arthur looked at Mark. "You think you're the king of this castle?" "I run the company, Dad. I pay the bills," Mark said arrogantly. "Beatrice and I have kept this family relevant while you've been resting." "Relevant," Arthur mused. He looked at Mr. Henderson. "Is everyone here? The board? The investors?" "Yes, sir," Mr. Henderson said, clutching a thick black portfolio. "Good," Arthur said. He looked back at Bella, his eyes softening. "Bella, come stand next to me." "Dad, what are you doing?" Mark snapped. "She doesn't belong up there." "She stands where I tell her to stand," Arthur roared, a sudden burst of energy shocking the room. Bella stepped forward, standing by the wheelchair. She felt small, but Arthur's hand reached out and gripped hers. His hand was cold, but his grip was iron. "You all think you know the Sterling story," Arthur addressed the crowd. "You see the yachts, you see the mansion, you see my son, the CEO." He made air quotes with his trembling fingers. "But you don't look at the foundation. You don't look at who holds the weight when the storm comes." Arthur signaled Mr. Henderson. Open the portfolio." Mark rolled his eyes. "Oh God, is this another lecture about hard work? Dad, spare us. Let's cut the cake." "This isn't a lecture," Arthur whispered, a smirk touching his pale lips. "This is an eviction notice." The silence in the ballroom was heavy, the kind of silence that precedes a natural disaster. Mr. Henderson, a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite and dressed in a charcoal suit, stepped into the light. He adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and placed the black portfolio on a small marble table that a waiter had hurriedly brought over. Mark laughed, but it was a nervous sound, cracking at the edges. "Okay, seriously? An eviction notice? Dad, your sense of humor is getting dark. Is this about the summer house? Because I told you, I'm renovating it." "This isn't about the summer house, Mark," Mr. Henderson said, his voice dry and devoid of emotion. He unzipped the portfolio. "This is about the ground you are standing on. 1420 Bridal Trails Boulevard, the Sterling Mansion." Beatrice stepped forward, her diamond necklace catching the light as she trembled with indignation. "Henderson, put that away. Arthur is clearly having an episode. This is a party. We are not going to discuss real estate in front of the senator." "Sit down, Beatrice," Arthur commanded. It wasn't a shout, but the authority in his voice was absolute. Beatrice froze, her mouth agape, and slowly lowered herself onto a velvet ottoman. Mr. Henderson pulled out a document. It was thick, bound in blue paper, with a red wax seal at the bottom. 3 years ago, the lawyer began, addressing the room rather than just Mark. Mr. Arthur Sterling restructured his personal assets. He was concerned about the volatility of the company leadership. Mark's face flushed red. "Volatility? I doubled our stock price." "You inflated the stock price with high-risk loans," Arthur interrupted, his eyes hard. "And you leveraged this house to do it. Didn't you, Mark?" A gasp went through the crowd. The guests whispered furiously. Leveraging the family estate was a cardinal sin in their world. It smelled of desperation. That was a temporary liquidity measure," Mark stammered, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. "It's standard practice, and I paid it off." "You didn't pay it off," Arthur said calmly. "Bella did." Mark froze. He looked at Bella, who was standing beside the wheelchair, looking just as confused as everyone else. "What?" Mark spat. "She doesn't have a dime. I made sure of that in the divorce settlement." Bella used the inheritance she received from her grandmother, money she never touched, money she was saving for a child, to anonymously pay off the lien you put on this house, Arthur revealed. She did it to save the family name from the scandal of foreclosure. She did it to save you, though God knows why. Bella felt her breath hitch. She remembered that day. She remembered wiring the money to a shell corporation Mr. Henderson had set up, thinking she was just helping the company stay afloat during a rough patch. Mark had lied to her about. She never knew it was for the house. She never knew Arthur knew. "She bailed you out," Arthur continued, his voice rising. "And how did you repay her? You cheated on her. You paraded this woman," he gestured vaguely at Chloe, "into her bed. You humiliated her. And then you cast her out with nothing." "That's business, Dad," Mark yelled, losing his composure. "Relationships end. It doesn't mean she owns anything. I'm the Sterling heir. By blood, this house is mine." "By blood, you are my son," Arthur said sadly. "But by law, you are a tenant." Mr. Henderson cleared his throat and lifted the document high. "This is a quitclaim deed, signed and notarized 3 years ago, concurrent with the repayment of the lien. At that time, ownership of the Sterling estate was transferred in full." Chloe laughed, a shrill, desperate sound. "Transferred to who? The bank? The charity foundation? Who cares? Mark will just buy it back." Mr. Henderson turned his gaze toward the girl in the gold sequin dress. "It cannot be bought back, Ms. Chloe, because it is not for sale. The deed is in the name of the person who saved it." Henderson turned the document around. The name typed in bold black letters was visible to everyone in the front row. Bella Vance. "No," Mark whispered, the color draining from his face until he looked like a corpse. That's not legal. You can't just give her the house. Mom, tell him." Beatrice was hyperventilating, fanning herself with a cocktail napkin. "Arthur, you gave the estate to the ex-wife? Have you lost your mind? She's not a sterling." "She is the only one in this room who acts like one," Arthur snapped. He looked up at Bella. "I transferred the deed to a blind trust with you as the sole beneficiary. The condition was that the trust would dissolve, and full title would pass to you upon my death. Or," Arthur paused, a wicked glint in his eye, "or at my discretion, should I feel the current occupants were abusing the property." Arthur gestured around the room. "Spilling drinks on guests? Mocking the poor? Turning my home into a circus for your vanity? I'd say the property is being abused." "So," Arthur concluded, looking at his son, "as of this moment, Mr. Henderson has filed the activation paperwork. This isn't my house, Mark, and it's certainly not yours." Arthur took Bella's hand and squeezed it. "It's hers." Bella stared at the document. The room was spinning. She wasn't just a guest anymore. She wasn't just the pity invite. She was the owner of a $50 million estate. The silence was broken by Chloe. "This is ridiculous," Chloe shrieked. She stomped her foot, the spikes of her heels digging into the expensive Persian rug. Bella's rug. "Mark, do something! She can't own this place. Look at her. She's wearing a wet dress. She drives a Honda." Mark seemed to snap out of his shock, fueled by Chloe's outrage. He charged toward Mr. Henderson, reaching for the papers. "Give me that! It's a forgery! My father is incompetent. I'll have this annulled in court by tomorrow morning." Two large men in dark suits, security guards Bella hadn't noticed before, stepped out from the shadows and blocked Mark's path. Mark bounced off the chest of one of them, stumbling back. "Don't touch the paperwork, sir," one of the guards rumbled. "You can fight it in court, Mark," Mr. Henderson said calmly, tucking the portfolio under his arm. "But the deed is ironclad. I wrote it myself. And you know I don't make mistakes. Furthermore, since Bella is now the legal owner, she has the right to determine who is allowed on the premises." All eyes turned to Bella. For years, Bella had made herself small. She had walked on eggshells to avoid upsetting Mark. She had swallowed Beatrice's insults to keep the peace. She had hidden her intelligence to not bruise Mark's ego. But looking at Mark now, sweaty, red-faced and impotent, and looking at Chloe, who was looking at the furniture as if calculating what she could steal, something inside Bella broke. Or perhaps something healed. She let go of the wheelchair and took a step forward. The crowd parted further, giving her space. "Bella," Mark said, his voice changing instantly. He put on his salesman face, the charming smile he used when he needed to close a deal. It was terrifying how quickly he switched from rage to manipulation. Baby, look, this is crazy, right? Dad's pulling a stunt. But we can work this out. We were a team once. Remember?" "A team," Bella repeated softly. "You brought your mistress to my face, Mark. You let her pour water on me. You told the whole room I was here for a handout." "I was joking," Mark laughed, spreading his hands. "Come on, you know my sense of humor. I was just playing to the crowd. Look, let's go to the private study, pour a drink, and figure out how to transfer this back to the family trust. I'll cut you a check, a big one, $5 million. You can go buy whatever you want. 5 million? Bella asked. 10! Mark shouted. $10 million, Bella. Just sign the paper. Chloe grabbed Mark's arm. 10 million? Mark, are you crazy? Don't give her that much. Shut up, Chloe! Mark roared at her, making her jump. He turned back to Bella, his eyes desperate. 10 million, Elle. Cash. Tonight. Bella looked at the grand staircase. She looked at the portraits of the ancestors on the wall. She looked at Arthur, who was watching her with pride. It's not for sale, Bella said, her voice ringing clear as a bell. Mark's face dropped. What? The house, Bella said. It's not for sale, and neither is my dignity. Not anymore. She turned to the head of security, a man named Frank who had worked at the gate for 20 years. Mark had tried to fire Frank twice for being too old, but Arthur had kept him on. Frank liked Bella. Frank hated Mark. Frank? Bella asked. Yes, Mum. Frank stood at attention, a small smile playing on his lips. I believe we have some trespassers at the party, Bella said calmly. I believe we do, Mum, Frank replied. Mark Sterling and his guest, Bella said, pointing a steady finger at the door. Please escort them off my property. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, and a few stifled laughs. You can't be serious, Mark screamed. I live here. My clothes are upstairs. My cars are in the garage. I'll have your things packed and sent to your office, Bella said coolly. As for the cars, well, checking the records, the company leases the Ferrari, doesn't it? So technically, you can take that. But the garage itself, that's mine. Get the car out. Now. This is insane, Beatrice wailed, standing up. Bella, you ungrateful little... Beatrice, Bella cut her off, turning her gaze to her former mother-in-law. You are welcome to stay and enjoy Arthur's birthday. But if you raise your voice at me one more time in my house, you will be joining your son in the parking lot. Beatrice clamped her mouth shut, falling back onto the ottoman in shock. Mark looked around the room, looking for allies. But the wealthy elite are fickle creatures. They smell power. And right now, the power had shifted. The senator turned his back to examine a painting. The investors suddenly found their shoes very interesting. No one was going to step in to save the man who had just lost his castle. I'm not leaving, Mark hissed, stepping toward Bella aggressively. You'll have to drag me out. Frank and the two other guards stepped forward, cracking their knuckles. Mr. Sterling, Frank said, his voice deep and menacing. Don't make this a viral video. Walk. Mark looked at the guards, then at Bella. He saw no fear in her eyes, only resolve. He spat on the floor, on the marble foyer, and turned around. Come on, Chloe, we're leaving. This place is a dump, anyway. He marched toward the door. Chloe hesitated. She looked at Mark, storming away, and then she looked back at the room full of billionaires. She looked at Bella, the new owner of the Sterling estate. Mark, wait, Chloe called out, but she didn't move to follow him immediately. She looked at Bella. Bella, I didn't know. The water bottle, it really was an accident. Maybe I could stay. I mean, Mark is so volatile, you know. I was just afraid of him. Bella looked at Chloe with pure pity. He's your problem now, Chloe. You wanted the man. You got him. But you don't get the house. Go, Bella ordered. Chloe let out a huff of indignation, grabbed her purse, and ran after Mark, her heels clacking loudly on the floor. And Chloe, Bella called out one last time. Chloe stopped at the door, turning around. You forgot your trash, Bella said. She pointed to the empty plastic water bottle Chloe had dropped on the floor earlier, the weapon of her bullying. Chloe glared, her face beet red. She didn't pick it up. She turned and fled into the rain. Frank motioned to a waiter, who quickly scooped up the bottle and wiped the floor. As the heavy oak doors slammed shut behind them, sealing out the wind and the rain, a heavy silence hung in the room. Then, a slow clapping started. It was Arthur. He was clapping his frail hands together. "Well," Arthur announced, his voice beaming, "now that the rubbish has been taken out, who wants cake?" The tension broke. A nervous laughter rippled through the crowd, followed by genuine applause. The band struck up a lively jazz number. The atmosphere shifted from a tense courtroom drama back to a party, but the dynamic had changed forever. Bella felt her knees go weak. The adrenaline was fading. She stumbled slightly, and Arthur reached out to steady her. "You did good, kid," Arthur whispered. "You did good." I evicted him, Arthur," Bella whispered back, trembling. "He's your son." "He's a man who needed to learn a lesson he couldn't buy his way out of," Arthur said. "You didn't just evict him, Bella. You woke him up. Maybe. Or maybe you just destroyed him. Either way, it was justice." But the night wasn't over. As the guests began to circle Bella, eager to ingratiate themselves with the new owner of the Sterling estate, Mr. Henderson tapped Bella on the shoulder. "Miss Vance," he said, his face grave. "Or I suppose Ms. Sterling Vance, if you prefer. We have a slight complication." "Complication?" Bella asked, her heart sinking. "Is it Mark? Is he coming back?" "No," Henderson said. "It's about the deeper clauses of the trust. Mark was right about one thing. He does have investors. Dangerous ones. And the house wasn't just collateral for a bank loan. It was collateral for a private loan. A loan shark disguised as a hedge fund." Bella's blood ran cold. "Mark borrowed money from the Vipers?" Arthur asked, his face paling. "Yes," Henderson said. "And now that Mark has defaulted effectively by losing the asset, they aren't going to look for him. They are going to come for the asset." Bella looked at the door. "You mean—" "I mean," Henderson said, checking his watch, "that Mark didn't just lose a house tonight. He painted a target on your back, and the people coming to collect aren't going to be stopped by Frank and 2 security guards." Bella looked at the luxury around her. She had won the battle, but the war had just begun. She owned the mansion, but she also owned its demons. "What do we do?" Bella asked. Arthur's eyes sharpened. The old tycoon was back. "We do what Sterlings do. We close the gates. We rally the troops. And we prepare for a siege." The music had stopped. The siege Arthur spoke of didn't look like medieval knights storming a castle. It looked like 3 matte black SUVs rolling silently up the driveway, stopping just inches from the closed wrought-iron gates. Inside the ballroom, the remaining guests gathered by the floor-to-ceiling windows, whispering nervously. They held their champagne flutes like shields. They knew what those cars meant. In the world of high finance, you didn't fear the police. You feared consultants, the fixers sent by private equity firms like Obsidian Capital to recover assets when a deal went south. "That's Vargas," Mr. Henderson whispered, peering through the curtains. "Head of recoveries for Obsidian. He doesn't go to court. He goes to the front door." "Frank," Bella said into the small radio the security guard had handed her. "Do not open the gate." "Copy that, Miss Vance, but they're demanding entry. They say they have a repossession order for the property." "Let me talk to him," Bella said. She turned to Arthur. "Stay here. You need to rest." "I'm coming with you," Arthur wheezed, trying to lift himself. "No," Bella said firmly. She placed a hand on his shoulder. It was the first time she had ever given an order to the patriarch of the Sterling family. "You gave me the house, Arthur. That means you gave me the fight. Trust me." She looked at Mr. Henderson. "Bring the original transfer documents, and bring Mark's loan application copies, the ones you found in his office safe. Bella walked out of the front door, not into the warmth of the party, but back out into the biting wind and rain. She stood under the portico, the lights of the mansion illuminating her emerald dress. She looked like a queen defending her kingdom. At the gate, a man in a raincoat had stepped out of the lead SUV. He was tall, with a face that looked like it had been chiseled out of cold marble. This was Vargas. Bella walked down the driveway, flanked by Frank and 2 other guards. She stopped 5 feet from the gate. "Mr. Vargas," Bella called out over the sound of the rain, "you're trespassing on private property." Vargas smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Ms. Vance, is it?" "We aren't trespassing. We are collecting. Mark Sterling defaulted on a $20 million bridge loan as of..." He checked his watch. "Midnight tonight. The collateral for that loan is this estate. We are here to secure the asset." "Open the gate or we ram it," a voice from the SUV shouted. "If you touch that gate," Bella said, her voice steady and loud, "I will have you arrested for destruction of property. And Mr. Vargas, you're a smart man. You don't make moves without paperwork. Let me see the loan agreement." Vargas signaled to an assistant, who passed a document through the bars of the gate. Bella took it. It was wet with rain, but legible. She scanned it quickly, Henderson shining a flashlight over her shoulder. There it was, Mark's signature. And under the section titled Collateral, it listed 14 Narena Bridal Trails Boulevard. Fee, simple absolute. "He signed it," Vargas said smoothly. "The house is ours." "No," Bella said. She handed the paper back. "He signed it. But he didn't own it." She snapped her fingers. Henderson handed her the blue-bound quitclaim deed from 3 years ago. "This house was transferred to the Sterling Family Trust, with me as the beneficiary, on October 14th, 2022, Bella declared. "The loan you have in your hand is dated January 2024. Mark Sterling pledged an asset he did not legally possess. That makes his contract with you void regarding the property." Vargas narrowed his eyes. He took the copy of the deed and examined it under the SUV's headlights. The rain hammered down on the paper, but the notary stamp was undeniable. "If he didn't own the house," Vargas said, his voice dropping an octave, "then he committed bank fraud. He defrauded Obsidian Capital." "Exactly," Bella said. "Mark lied to you. He scammed you. And if you force your way onto this property, you aren't repossessing collateral. You are breaking and entering into the home of a third party who has no contract with you." Bella stepped closer to the bars, staring Vargas down. "I am not Mark Sterling. I don't owe you a penny, and I have the King County Sheriff on speed dial, along with every major news outlet in Seattle inside my living room. Do you really want Obsidian Capital to be seen attacking a single woman's home because you failed to do your due diligence on a borrower?" The silence stretched for 10 agonizing seconds. Vargas looked at the deed. He looked at the mansion. He looked at Bella. He realized he had been played, not by her, but by Mark. Mark had gambled that he could pay the loan back before anyone checked the deed. Mark had lost. Vargas let out a slow breath. He signaled to his driver. "You're right," Vargas said, his tone icy. "We have no quarrel with you, Miss Vance. Our issue is with Mr. Sterling." "Then I suggest you go find him," Bella said coldly. "He left 10 minutes ago in a red Ferrari. License plate MST 88. He's probably heading for the interstate." Vargas smiled again, and this time it was terrifyingly genuine. It was the smile of a wolf that had just caught a new scent. "Thank you for the tip," Vargas said. "Boys, mount up. We have a new target." The men scrambled back into the SUVs. Tires squealed on the wet asphalt as the convoy whipped around, speeding away not toward the house, but down the hill. chasing the Ferrari. Bella stood in the rain, watching the red taillights fade. Her legs finally gave out, and she slumped against the cold iron of the gate. Henderson caught her arm. "You did it," Henderson breathed, looking at her with newfound awe. "You turned the wolves on the shepherd." "He brought them to the door," Bella whispered, shivering. "I just pointed them in the right direction." 3 miles down the road, the reality of Mark Sterling's new life was setting in. The red Ferrari Spider was pulled over on the shoulder of a dark, wooded stretch of road. The engine was dead. Mark pounded the steering wheel in a blind rage. "Piece of junk!" he screamed. "Start! Start, you useless piece of metal!" "Stop screaming!" Chloe yelled from the passenger seat. She was shivering, her gold dress offering zero protection against the Seattle chill. Her mascara was running down her face in black streaks. "Why did the car stop? Did you run out of gas?" "It's not gas," Mark shouted. "It's a remote kill switch. The leasing company. They must have triggered it. Someone at the party must have called them." Mark pulled out his phone. He had 5% battery left. He dialed his private banker. "We're sorry. The number you have dialed is not available." He opened his banking app. Access denied. Account frozen. He tried his credit cards. He had tried to buy gas at the station a mile back, and 3 different cards had been declined. The attendant had looked at him like he was a bum in a tuxedo. "Mark," Chloe said, her voice trembling, "call a limo, or an Uber Black. I'm freezing. My shoes are ruined." "I can't," Mark snapped. "My cards are locked. Dad must have frozen everything. That old vindictive—" "So, you have no money?" Chloe asked slowly. The whine in her voice was replaced by a cold, hard edge. "It's temporary," Mark lied, turning to her with a desperate, manic grin. "It's just a misunderstanding. Tomorrow morning, I'll go to the office, fire the board, and get the cash. We'll go to the Four Seasons tonight. I just need— Do you have your card?" Chloe stared at him. The man she thought was her ticket to the high life. The man who had promised her yachts and diamonds, sitting in a dead car on the side of the road, asking her to pay for a hotel. "You want me to pay?" Chloe scoffed. "Just for tonight. I'll pay you back double tomorrow," Mark begged. Chloe looked out the window. In the rearview mirror, she saw bright headlights approaching fast. 3 black SUVs were tearing down the road, moving with aggressive speed. Chloe was street smart. She recognized the trouble when she saw it. She knew who Mark owed money to. She had overheard his frantic phone calls late at night. "I think your friends are here," Chloe said dryly. Mark looked in the mirror. His face went pale. "Vargas? No. No. They can't find me here." He fumbled with the door handle. "Chloe, we have to run into the woods. If we hide, they'll pass us." Chloe didn't move. She unlocked her door and stepped out into the rain. "Chloe, what are you doing? Get back in." "I don't do woods, Mark," Chloe said. She pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. A ride-share app was already open. "And I don't do broke men." "Broke? I'm Mark Sterling." "Not anymore," Chloe said. "You're just a guy who lost a house to his ex-wife. And honestly, she was right. You are kind of a loser." "I left her for you," Mark screamed, scrambling out of the car. "I gave you everything." "You gave me a headache," Chloe retorted. She saw the headlights of the Uber she had called approaching from the opposite direction. "Chloe, please, don't leave me here with them," Mark pleaded, gesturing to the approaching SUVs. The Uber pulled up. Chloe hopped in the back seat without a second glance. "Driver, just go. Fast." Mark watched the taillights of the Uber disappear, leaving him alone in the darkness. He turned around. The 3 black SUVs boxed in the Ferrari. The doors opened. Vargas stepped out. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed. "Mr. Sterling," Vargas said, opening an umbrella. "You are a very hard man to get a hold of." "Vargas," Mark stammered. backing up until he hit the cold metal of the Ferrari. "Look, the house. There was a mix-up with the paperwork. My father, he's senile." "We spoke to the owner," Vargas interrupted. "Ms. Vance, charming woman, very sharp. She explained the situation clearly. You sold us a dream you didn't own." Two large men stepped up behind Vargas. "I can get the money," Mark cried, tears mixing with the rain on his face. "I have offshore accounts. I have contacts." "We know," Vargas said calmly, "and we're going to help you find them. Because until we get our 20 million, Mr. Sterling, you belong to us." Vargas gestured to the back seat of the SUV. "Get in. We have a long drive ahead of us." Mark looked at the dark woods. He looked at the dead Ferrari. He looked at the mansion on the hill, glowing in the distance like a distant star he could never reach again. He realized then that Bella hadn't just evicted him. She had served him up on a silver platter. Shoulders slumped, defeated, Mark Sterling climbed into the back of the black SUV. The door slammed shut with a finality that echoed louder than thunder. The sun rose over the Bridal Trails estate the next morning, burning off the mist and the memory of the rain. The storm was over. Bella sat in the solarium, a cup of hot tea in her hands, looking out over the sprawling emerald lawns. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel like a prison or a museum. It felt like a home. There was a soft whirring sound, and Arthur rolled into the room. He looked tired, the excitement of the previous night having taken a toll on his frail body, but his spirit seemed lighter than it had been in a decade. "You're up early," Arthur said, his voice raspy but warm. "I couldn't sleep," Bella admitted. She placed her cup down on the glass table. "Arthur, the news reports. They say Mark is missing. They found his car abandoned on the side of the highway." Arthur nodded slowly. He didn't look surprised. Mark made his choices, Bella. He chose quick money over hard work. He chose flash over substance. When you dance with the devil, eventually the music stops. "I sent his things to the city," Bella said softly. "Whatever was left in his room. It wasn't much. He never really lived here," Arthur said, looking around the room. "He just occupied space. You breathed life into this place." Arthur reached into the pocket of his robe and pulled out a small velvet box. He slid it across the table toward her. Bella opened it. Inside sat the sterling sapphire, the massive, deep blue ring that Chloe had demanded the night before. "I can't take this," Bella said, shaking her head. "This belongs to the family." "You are the family," Arthur said firmly. "Blood makes you relatives, Bella. Loyalty makes you family. Mark may carry my DNA, but he never carried my values. You did. You took care of me when he was too busy jet-setting. You saved this house with your own money when he tried to gamble it away. You stood tall when they tried to make you feel small." Arthur looked her in the eyes. "The world thinks I gave you this mansion to spite my son. But that's not true. I gave it to you because you're the only one who will keep the lights on." Bella took the ring. It was heavy, cool to the touch. She slipped it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "What now?" Bella asked, looking out at the gate where the security team was already changing shifts, guarding her sanctuary. "Now?" Arthur smiled, closing his eyes to rest in the sun. "Now, we have breakfast. And then, you run the empire." Bella smiled. She picked up her tea. The water stain on her dress from the night before was gone, washed away in the laundry. The woman who had arrived trembling in the rain was gone too. In her place sat the lady of the manor. And this time, no one was going to tell her to leave. Mark Sterling thought he was untouchable. He thought that wealth was a shield that allowed him to treat people like garbage. He brought his mistress to humiliate his ex-wife, thinking he held all the power. But he forgot the most important rule of power. It doesn't reside in a title, or a suit, or a loud voice. True power belongs to those who are patient, kind, and resilient. In one night, the tables didn't just turn. They flipped completely. The mistress was left on the side of the road, realizing her golden ticket was a fraud. The arrogant son was taken away by the very wolves he tried to feed. And the quiet, unwanted ex-wife, she didn't just get the last laugh. She got the deed, the ring, and the future. It's a reminder to us all. Be careful who you step on while you're climbing out the ladder, because you never know who owns the building you're climbing on. What did you think of Arthur's decision? Did Mark get exactly what he deserved, or was the punishment too harsh? Let us know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. We drop new dramas every week that you won't want to miss. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.